Here's a number that stopped me cold the first time I saw it: $60,000. A fully finished, move-in ready Quonset Barndominium. Not a shell. Not a kit you spend 6 months assembling in your backyard on weekends. A real home with real insulation, real floors, a real kitchen, and a roof shaped like something that belongs on the cover of an architecture magazine. And by the time we get to number 1, you are going to understand exactly why that number is not only real, but one of the smartest financial decisions a person can make right now. Prefab Quonset Barndominiums have been quietly building momentum for the last 3 years. In 2026, they have officially become the most efficient way to get off the rent treadmill and onto land that is actually yours. The arched steel roof is not just a style choice. It eliminates the need for load-bearing interior walls, which means more usable space per dollar than almost any traditional building method. No weather delays that push your move-in date back by 4 months. No contractor markups that double the original quote by the time the last nail is driven. No 18-month construction nightmare, while you keep writing rent checks for a place you will never own. These 5 options are real companies with real delivered prices, and each one represents a completely different life you could be living before this year is over. Stay with me until number 1, because that $60,000 figure is not what you think. It is actually far more interesting than it looks. But before we get into the list, there is something you need to understand about why Quonset specifically, not just any prefab barndominium, not just any metal building, but this exact roof shape is what makes the numbers work the way they do. Because most people who start researching barndominiums end up comparing square footage and price per foot and completely miss the thing that actually changes the math. The Quonset arch is a continuous curved structure. There is no ridge beam. There are no rafters. There are no trusses carrying load across a wide span the way a traditional gable roof demands. That single engineering fact eliminates one of the most expensive parts of any large span building. When a stick-built contractor quotes you a wide-open great room with vaulted ceilings, he is pricing the structural gymnastics required to hold that roof up. In a Quonset build, the arch is the structure. The curve distributes load down the walls and into the foundation without a single internal post in the way. That is not a design gimmick. That is physics working in your favor, and it shows up directly in the price. It also shows up in the lifespan. A properly installed Quonset arch, sealed, insulated, and set on a solid foundation, will outlast most of the stick-built homes built in the same decade. There is no wood framing to rot. There is no sheathing to absorb moisture behind siding. There are no complex roof valleys where water sits and eventually finds a way through. The arch sheds everything: rain, snow load, wind. It was a preferred structure for military installations across the world for this exact reason. When the United States Navy needed buildings that would still be standing and functional after decades of coastal weather, they built Quonsets. What works in those conditions works exceptionally well on your 2 acres in Tennessee or your rural lot in Montana. And here's the thing nobody tells you when they hand you a floor plan comparison between a Quonset and a traditional barndominium. The interior height under a Quonset arch, especially at the larger widths, is genuinely usable space. Some people look at the curved walls and assume they lose square footage in the corners. That is the number 1 objection, and it is the one that disappears the moment a person actually steps inside one. Here is what is actually happening with the corners. Yes, the wall curves inward toward the floor, but the curve does not start at eye level. On a standard 30-foot wide Quonset, the wall is fully vertical for the first several feet off the ground before the arch begins its sweep. That means your furniture sits flush against a flat wall surface, exactly the way it would in any other room. Your couch, your bed frame, your dresser, none of it floats awkwardly in space. The curve begins above where you live, not inside it. And where it goes from there is the part that changes how a room feels. At the center of a 30-foot wide arch, you're standing under somewhere between 14 and 16 feet of clear height. Compare that to the 8-foot ceilings in the apartment most people are currently paying $1,400 a month to live in. That is not a small difference. That is a completely different relationship between a person and the space around them. Architects charge significant money to engineer that kind of volume into a traditional home because achieving it with conventional framing requires structural work that adds cost at every step. In a Quonset, it is simply what you get. The arch produces it automatically. James, a guy from outside of Boise, said something that stuck with me when he described walking into his finished Quonset for the first time. He said it felt dishonest, like the building was bigger on the inside than the footprint suggested it should be. He had measured the square footage on paper before delivery. He knew the numbers. But standing inside it, the numbers stopped feeling like numbers and started feeling like a room. That is a geometry doing what geometry does. Volume is not the same thing as square footage, and the Quonset arch gives you both in a ratio that no flat-ceiling building at any comparable price can touch. What they actually gain is a ceiling height at the center that creates a sense of volume no flat ceiling can match at any price point. Owners describe it as feeling more open than spaces twice the size. That is not a marketing line. That is geometry. And because the arch panels arrive at your lot pre-cut and pre-engineered to lock together, the assembly timeline collapses in a way that still surprises people the first time they see it. What takes a traditional framing crew 6 to 8 weeks to erect goes up in days. Your foundation is the long part. Once it is cured and ready, the structure rises fast. In 2026, you can get all of that: the arch, the lifespan, the open interior, the storm resistance, and a move-in timeline measuring weeks instead of seasons for $60,000. That is what we are about to show you. Number 5 is the one that ends arguments. When your Uncle Gary shows up at Thanksgiving and tells the table that metal homes are not real homes, you pull up a photo of this build, and you let the silence do the talking. American Steel Span, $195,000 delivered and installed. 1,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, an attached 2-car garage, a covered wraparound porch, and floor-to-ceiling windows in the main living area that make the interior look like a mountain lodge that someone spent $400,000 building. The Quonset arch on this build runs the full length of the structure, giving you vaulted ceilings throughout the living space without spending a single extra dollar on structural framing work. The kitchen features quartz countertops, a farmhouse sink, and an open layout that flows directly into the dining and living areas without a wall interrupting the space. The primary bedroom suite has a walk-in closet and a tile shower that first-time visitors will assume costs $100,000 on its own. American Steel Span has been engineering prefab metal structures for over 2 decades, and their thermal insulation system keeps heating and cooling costs at a fraction of what a comparable stick-built home demands from your monthly budget. Here is what most people never factor when they first see a price like $195,000. Traditional stick-built construction at this square footage takes 14 to 18 months from breaking ground to move-in day. American Steel Span's prefab modular process takes 4 to 5 months. That gap is not just time. That is 9 to 13 months of rent you simply stop paying. At $1,500 a month, that is $13,000 to $19,500 back in your pocket before you hang a single piece of art on the wall. Number 5 is not just a home. It is a financial argument that practically makes itself. But here is where it gets more interesting, because number 4 is where a specific kind of man starts doing math he has never done before. Number 4. Miracle Truss Buildings, $155,000 delivered and installed. 1,400 square feet. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an attached garage, and a guest loft that sits above the main living space under the highest point of the arch, a design feature that standard stick-built construction simply cannot replicate without bringing in a structural engineering team and watching your budget multiply overnight. Miracle Truss engineered their own proprietary arch system, which means every structural component is designed and fabricated inside a single facility before it ever ships to your property. No mismatched parts arriving from 3 different suppliers. No standing on your lot on day 45 watching a framing crew sit idle, because roofing materials are back-ordered for 6 weeks. Everything fits perfectly together because every piece was designed together from the very beginning. The loft in this layout is what makes people stop and stare at photos longer than they expect to. Marcus, a remote worker from outside of Knoxville, built his home office up in that loft space. He sits under the apex of the arch, looks out over 38 acres of Tennessee land, and takes his calls from a chair that costs him less per month than his old parking spot. He said the only thing he regrets is that he waited for years longer than he should have. And this is a structure that earns its keep during severe weather, because the Quonset arch profile has been proven across decades in military and agricultural construction. That curved surface sheds wind load in ways that no flat-walled building can replicate. When a storm warning comes across his phone, Marcus does not think twice about his roof. That kind of piece is not a feature listed on any spec sheet. Number 3 is the one that solves two problems at the exact same time. And if you are a man who works with his hands, this is the one you need to pay attention to right now. SteelMaster buildings, $120,000 delivered and installed. 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, an open kitchen and living space, and an attached workshop bay that runs the full width of the building. For the man who is currently paying to store his tools in a unit, he drives 25 minutes to visit. This layout erases an entire monthly expense the moment the keys land in his hand. Tyler is a custom furniture maker in Western Virginia. He builds pieces under commission and ships them nationally. He places SteelMaster on 2 acres, installed his dust collection system, his cabinet saw, and his finishing station in the workshop bay, and added an overhead loft inside the workshop for raw lumber storage. His living space connects to the shop through a single interior door. He wakes up, walks 12 feet, and he is at work. Shop rental expenses, 0. Drive time to his tools, 0. Within the first year, the reduction in operating costs was large enough that the structure had effectively offset a significant portion of its own purchase price in overhead that simply ceased to exist. SteelMaster has been in operation since 1975. Their arch panels are cold-formed steel, shaped under high pressure without heat, which produces a stronger and more dimensionally consistent curve than traditional roll-form manufacturing methods. The spray foam insulation package they install seals the interior so completely that owners in northern Minnesota winters and central Texas summers report energy bills that feel unreasonably low for a metal structure. This is not a repurposed agricultural building with upgraded flooring. It is an engineered system refined over 5 decades of continuous real-world use. Number 2 is the one that surprises people who think they already know what the inside of a Quonset Barndominium looks like. Built steel structures, $88,000 delivered and installed. 800 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 full bathroom, a complete kitchen, a living area with 10-foot ceilings at the apex of the arch, luxury vinyl plank flooring from wall to wall, a mini split heating and cooling system, spray foam insulation throughout, and black frame windows on the front facade that make the exterior look like something featured in an architectural design publication rather than sitting on a rural lot. Under $90,000. The finished result looks like it belongs in a price category that is twice as high. Ryan is 33 years old and lives outside of Nashville. He places a Built on 5 acres he bought for $42,000. Total all-in investment, $130,000. Before this, he was paying $1,400 a month for an apartment that gave him 0 equity, 0 land, and 0 control over anything about the space he was living in. Within 9 months of moving in, he had eliminated that $1,400 from his monthly life permanently, owned his home outright with no mortgage payment, and was sitting on land that had already appreciated because of what he built on it. The math Ryan wrote on a napkin the night he signed his purchase agreement is the kind of math that changes how a person thinks about every financial decision they have made up to that point. Here is what the purchase price does not tell you about a Built specifically. Their arch panels use a continuous panel system with no horizontal seams running across the roofline, and a horizontal seam on a metal roof is the single most common origin point for water intrusion in any prefab metal building. The arch runs as one uninterrupted curve from one foundation edge to the other. When heavy rain hits Tennessee, Ryan does not think about his roof once. He just listens to it from inside. Every Quonset owner brings this up within the first few minutes of conversation, and the reason is simple. Confidence in your own structure is something no rental apartment will ever give you. And now we are at number 1. The number I personally verified twice before I felt comfortable putting it in front of you. The number that completely resets the conversation about what is actually reachable for a real person with a real budget in 2026. Number 1. General Steel buildings, $60,000 delivered and installed. 600 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a full kitchen, a mini split system for heating and cooling, luxury vinyl plank flooring throughout the entire interior, spray foam insulation in every wall panel, and the ceiling, real windows, real exterior doors, and a metal roof with a 50-year structural rating. $60,000 for a home that is fully finished and ready for you to walk to the front door on delivery day. Here's exactly why that number is achievable, and why the people who hear it and still doubt it simply have not visited one yet. General Steel manufactures inside a climate-controlled production facility where every single panel is precision-cut by computer-controlled equipment, pre-insulated and pre-wired before it ever leaves the building. There are no rain delays rotting materials that have not been covered yet. There is no lumber sitting on a muddy job site warping through 3 weeks of bad weather while a subcontractor, who is 3 jobs deep, tries to squeeze you into a schedule. Manufacturing in a controlled facility removes approximately 35% of traditional construction costs before the first panel is ever loaded onto a truck. That savings passes directly to the buyer. Is 600 square feet a small home? Yes. Is it a real, complete, livable home? Without any question. But the story that stays with me is this one. 2 brothers, Derek and Nathan, each purchased a 2-acre parcel in East Texas on the same day. Total combined cost for both pieces of land, $46,000. Derek places General Steel unit on his parcel. Nathan places on his. Between the 2 structures, they built a shared covered outdoor living area. Treated lumber posts, a corrugated metal roof that matched the profile of both arches, a poured concrete slab, an outdoor kitchen on one end and a fire pit on the other. String lights overhead. Their families use that shared space almost every single weekend. 2 separate homes. 2 separate legal parcels of land. 1 compound that functions exactly the way they design it around their actual lives. Total combined cost for both men, land included, $166,000. 2 paid-off homes. 0 landlords. 0 rent checks. 0 permission required from anyone for anything they choose to do on their property. Derek says kids spend more time outside in a single weekend than they used to in an entire month in a city apartment. Nathan said something shorter. He said he finally feels like he lives somewhere that actually belongs to him. That is what $60,000 means when you stop looking at it as a number and start looking at it as a door. 5 Quonset Barndominiums. 5 real companies. 5 completely different lives. All prefab. All available to a real person in 2026. American Steel span at $195,000 for the man who wants to silence every skeptic permanently. Miracle Truss at $155,000 for the man who wants stormproof walls, a loft office, and enough acres between himself and the rest of the world to finally breathe. SteelMaster at $120,000 for craftsman who is done paying rent on a shop he will never own. A Mary build at $88,000 for the man who ran the napkin math and realized he was one decision away from never writing a rent check again. And General Steel at $60,000 for the man who understands that the size of the structure does not determine the size of the life you build inside it. Every option on this list can be on your lot and finished in under 5 months. None of them require you to manage a construction crew for the next year and a half. None of them ask you to wait while your life keeps passing. So which one is yours? Drop the number in the comments right now, 1 through 5, and tell me which build fits where your life is today. Not where you hope will be in 3 years. Not after the raise, not after the market settles, not after you feel ready. Where your life actually is right now. Because here is what I have watched happen over and over again with people who find this kind of content. They watch, they do the math, they feel something shift, and then they wait for the perfect moment. And the perfect moment never comes. And 2 years later, they are still in the same apartment, writing the same rent check to the same landlord who has not done a single thing to deserve it. The people who actually make the move are not the ones who had more money or more time or better circumstances. They are the ones who picked a number, asked the first question, and let the process start. That is the entire difference. 1 question sent to 1 company. 1 lot visited on 1 Saturday morning. 1 conversation with a lender who has worked with prefab build before. The first step is always smaller than the thing that is keeping you from taking it. And the cost of waiting is not 0. It is every rent check you write between the day and the day you finally decide to stop writing them. Do that math on a napkin tonight and see what number stares back at you. So if number 5 is the one that made your jaw drop, the bill that would shut down every skeptic in your family permanently, write 5 in the comments. If number 4 spoke to you because you've been dreaming about remote land and a loft office that belongs entirely to you, write 4. If number 3 is the one that finally connects your work and your home under one roof and eliminates an expense category you have been carrying for years, write 3. If number 2 is where your life is right now, the man who is done paying rent and ready to own 800 square feet of something real, write 2. And if number 1 stopped you cold because $60,000 is actually a number you can work with, write 1, because that comment matters. It tells me exactly what to make next, and it keeps this channel moving in the direction that actually helps people instead of just filling time. Subscribe if you are not subscribed. Every single week, this channel puts out content built around one idea: that the gap between where most people are and where they want to be is smaller than the system wants them to believe. Real builds, real prices, real timelines, and real stories from real people who made the decision and never looked back. No filler. No content designed to waste your time. Just the information that actually moves people from watching to owning. If that is the kind of channel you want in your feed, hit subscribe right now because the next video is already in the works, and it might be the one that finally makes everything click into place for you. Do not miss it.